Live from the beautiful library studios of downtown Grand Rapids, you're listening to Green Rapids.
Wow. Congratulations, Denise. That was the best. I don't think we've had one that exciting. Okay.
I try.
Well, welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, you're listening to Green Rapids, and we are here today with one of my bosses, Denise Keele. So go ahead, Denise, and introduce yourself. And yeah.
Who are you?
Who am I? What a great question. And first I have to say thank you so much for hosting me here today, Nancy, and of course Erica, just one of her bosses, as you heard. We don't have to be in that mode at all. I'm here for you all today. You're the boss of the podcast.
Oh,
so
stop.
That's
too much
works.
power.
That's how it works. No,
We can't handle.
Yeah. So
well, gosh, where to begin? So I think a couple things are kind of important to understand about my background. I am as old as the environmental movement. So I turned 50 this last weekend.
Wow.
happy
Exactly.
birthday.
What
I
a way
didn't
to
know
be
it
able to
was
mark
this
your
last
age, though.
weekend.
I know. So, I sort of grew up, right, with this idea that, we are part of the problem here and humans' impact was finally being recognized and realized. So I grew up on a farm in western Iowa.
Okay.
Growing up doing conservative rural caucusing even, right,
What?
is my background. And, I did not marry the hog farmer that I was supposed to marry.
Darn.
I really missed out on
Missing
that
out.
one, right?
Endless bacon.
Hey, that's a really good point.
Some choices you look back and you're like, I know I made the right choice. There are others that you're never sure. Right?
Yeah,
of
So
course.
I'm the weird one in my family. I did not go to Iowa State to learn how to grow better soybeans.
Okay.
I went to the University of Tennessee to learn how to grow trees, which isn't actually that far apart from, growing soybeans. But to me, right, that was a whole new world. And
Yeah, you were like, I'm a rebel.
yeah, and Tennessee, I went there because it's the most tree species in the continental United States.
Oh,
At one
I
point,
did not know that.
I think I knew 212 species, but I could not probably pass that test today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reasonably.
It's been a while. So I went to school for forestry, right?
Okay.
To learn, right? And it was
I
always
did not know
the
this,
art
Denise.
and science, right? But most of that degree was science, right? And I still remember meeting with an advisor, no, you must have organic chemistry. That was a poor decision, right? Another one shouldn't have done. But I got out with my undergraduate degree and took my first position, was with the Tennessee Division of Forestry, Wildlife, and Fisheries.
Was that fun?
It was. I was barely 22, I think.
Okay.
And worked out in the field for a little bit. And one of the very first prescriptions that I ever wrote for a forest, we got sued.
Oh, no way.
I remember you saying this. Okay.
Right. And I had taken all this hard science and this Iowa farm girl, this transplant to the South, right? Cultural everything, right? White girl, 1990s, right? What is happening here? It's 2 + 2 = 4. And I really didn't understand why anyone would challenge the scientist's decision,
Yeah.
right? Much less what are you trying to do? We're trying to be the good guys here. What we're doing is going to increase the oak regeneration and it's going to be better for wildlife and all of
Yeah.
these things, right? And I thought, wow. And I think my boss must have felt a little sorry for me because could see I was spinning.
Yeah.
And did a really important thing, gave me a different opportunity, right? He said, while this case is going on, it's the Wild Turkey Federation that was suing the state and my prescription. And he said, while this is going on, why don't you take a break from being in the field and go to the capital, Nashville, Tennessee. This is pre-internet is how, just to recheck myself here, people. And follow the Tennessee state legislature, which meant going to actual sessions, which meant reading an entire book every day of what was going to be printed out. You used 3-ring binders, so you could print a new sheet and change a paragraph if you wanted to, and then you would insert it and flip through is how you actually had to do that. And I think I got hooked, right, on the policy side of things. I saw all these folks making decisions and having conversations who knew nothing about the actual science or what was going to be good for our
still
forests.
happening today.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's the logic part behind it too, right? Like the reasons for me advocating for the environment. It's not just because I'm a tree hugger, right? There's fact behind what I'm saying,
Yeah.
and you can't negate that. You simply can't.
That's right.
Yeah.
So even back then, before Listen to the Science was a siren call, folks were recognizing that our political system was just really divorced from the idea that there were humans who could understand and could make good decisions with uncertainty, right? And so I decided to go back to school because that was my way off the farm, right?
Yeah.
For my generation, going to school was
You just
like,
had to get out.
You're
That
like,
was
this gets
it.
me out of
Yeah.
town.
this is how you get a new life, right? And so that's what I did. And I went back for my master's at University of Tennessee and took every course ever. I think my master's I think I have a minor in everything. Religious studies,
Nice.
environmental sociology. I took every social science and humanities I could because I felt so unbalanced too. I realized I didn't know what I didn't know, right? I didn't understand the value bases that are driving other folks to want different things out of our forests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why that was even a thing. Like it really, it seems silly now, but I really didn't get that people would have different understandings of our forest and want different outcomes. And so that to me was a huge awakening.
I like that you went back to like the human.
I did.
Like exploring like almost like the human like complex as like a reason for wanting to pursue a lot of these things.
You got it exactly. And then this decision, in retrospect, they always look so easy, right? And so then I continued that on and went for my Ph.D. at Syracuse University and the State University of New York College of Environmental and Science and Forestry, longest names ever.
They are very long.
But they have a joint, and that's my Ph.D. is in environmental politics and natural resource policy. And of course, I started studying how do interest groups use the courts in order to change public policy, because I had this direct experience, right? And so
course.
it still so informs our work today, right? You want someone who is directly impacted to be telling you like what that's like and what's important. And that
unless
was,
you're like a giant corporation, in which case you just kind of plug your ears.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
No, you don't need all of the emotional aspect of it or even that science-based, right?
Exactly.
You just need I guess an explanation as to why you're going to turn out a profit or why you're going to benefit maybe in one entity in one way or another.
Right.
We make those like sweetheart deals
Right.
with corporations. I feel like as a state, as a country, we'll do that. And now we're at the whim of what they want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So then I learned all of those things, right? And then I became the professor, right? That's what you do after your PhD to continue the research, and because I thought, okay, we could really understand this. This is a contribution that I can make here about science, about the human piece in these decisions and how that happens. So I was at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, just down 131 here from your fine city. We covet many things in Grand Rapids. It's okay, Kalamazoo. You're going to be all right out there.
Yeah.
And was there for about 15 years as professor of environmental law and policy. And during that time, of course, the climate crisis is sort of underneath all of this, right? Like I wrote a paper as an undergraduate about forest carbon, right?
And how many years ago? Yeah, that's wild.
Did you say 92?
Yes.
Wow.
I've been doing this a long time, right? And so I know it's one of your questions later, but it's one of the things that gives, I hope, some hope out there, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm still here, right? There's something about sustaining yourself in this work for a really long time. And you might change how you approach it is what I've been doing, right? To keep it fresh, to keep myself invigorated. Like, okay, you got to do a different thing, Keele.
Yeah.
Like, what's next, right? So
such a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's how you sustain, like staying in something you're passionate about, but getting something a little bit different, another angle.
Changing the actual like workflow. So to say. Yeah. Well, I like that you were like a professor because like in a way that's also like duplicating yourself too, right?
Yes.
So you're passing down a lot of these values, that knowledge, and hopefully
I love
creating
that.
more
Well,
EJ warriors.
Marshall, I know, was one of your students.
That's
right?
No way! What a small world.
and Deirdre.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that Deirdre was. So it's so interesting too to see like you out in the world because that is like one of your very infamous you know, like that is who you are to a huge portion of people who are doing this work in West Michigan.
That's right.
So to Nancy's point, you're building this like organized structure around that mindset, around your experiences and your knowledge. And it's so cool.
Well, it's so fun to see. That's the enduring legacy of being a teacher, right? And so when I took this leap of faith and did advocacy full time, one of the first things I noticed is how many of my students were at other organizations or working for the state.
Good to see.
So awesome, right? And I think threw some of them off just a little bit, right? So there's a lot of folks out there who cannot not call me Dr. Keele.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. And at the same time, like, we're colleagues.
Yeah.
We're doing this work together. And that's what I always envisioned for them as students, even, right?
Wow, I feel like that made me cry.
Let's get on the same level.
Let's do this together.
Yeah, totally.
Is always how I approach things. So I was taking students, for example, we were lobbying in Lansing every semester. We'd get on a big bus. We'd drive from Kalamazoo. We would pick some issues.
Oh, you were? Like, let's radicalize these kids.
We were doing it. Exactly.
That's awesome.
Exactly. It didn't take too much.
It's great because it's also like real world practice too.
That's
right. So I feel like, and like I definitely come from a background in which like advocacy was not part of the way we did things.
Right.
I mean, it is in like certain movements, but like I grew up like fundamental Baptist, where it was always like just follow the rules, don't challenge the authorities, like stay in your lane. But it's great that you were like, oh no, I'm going to teach you how to go out and actually talk to people. And to me, that was a big hurdle. Even just talking to any elected official was so scary.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I had to learn that too, right? And so for me, it's always been like what you said earlier, Nancy, this duplicate, but every time I've changed career, it's because I've learned something and learned something new for myself or how to do things. And then I apparently just have this insatiable urge to make sure other people can be brought along with that. Like, oh man, I learned this cool thing. I want you to know about it so bad too. You know?
And we were just talking about this at lunch, right? Just about how great it would be to be able to take all people and teach them the skills that we have, because we can't teach everybody everything. I mean, being even a professor for 15 years, you could not have taught every single person everything you know, or, you know, reach them in a way that might be compelling enough for them to join a movement or, you know, get into the environmental fight. And so it's so important to have different revenues to get engaged, but you have to have that base knowledge, right?
Absolutely.
Like, how are you just supposed to go out and change policy and law?
Right.
You have to have somebody to guide you through that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so like what really turned me to climate work almost exclusively was exactly that, because we started a book club.
Okay.
Those darn reading books, you know, so much trouble. Actually, I'm famous in my hometown for I've read every book in our little small town library.
Oh,
really? That's so funny.
I
think
love that.
Always this urge for knowledge, for connections, for realizing. And once you really realize there's a lot of ways to be in this world, there's a lot of ways to have a successful life. And then you can learn how to honor those, right? And I think that's always just been so fascinating to me. And books are an easy way to experience other lives and cultures and ideas, right? There's a philosopher who used to say they're the lightest baggage, right? These ideas that we get to carry around.
I like that.
I know, right?
That is. You know, Nancy was a librarian, and we have determined that if and when she's retired, she is going to be a librarian again.
Well,
or maybe just before.
From this work.
Yeah, before she retires.
But I do want to retire out of the library system. And I've communicated this to the library, and they're like, we'll have a full-time position available for you. And I was like, thank you. Yes. So they're on board with it too.
That's her last stop.
Before I get off the street.
I love it. Well, you're going to have many acts, I hope, in your lives too, right?
Oh, of course.
And that's what I hope by now, in my seasoned age, we'll use that word, right? That's also the idea that you should change and grow in your own lives as we understand new things, right? And doing some of those readings. And so a couple other colleagues, actually, we started a faculty climate change working group at Western and started reaching out to other disciplines, right? It's why so much of our work now focuses on education. Like, how do we even change that? But it was really a book club that started getting the community involved. And I always joke because I was so proud of like my little faculty list. In like 2013, that was like 200 people. I thought, wow, like you're doing something, you know? Yeah. And then you're in your own Kalamazoo community. And I realized, oh my gosh, like we hosted a meeting in 2019 to see if there was any interest in maybe doing a doing a climate strike, because
Oh.
Greta's movement had, of course, become big, right? She starts in 2018. Extinction Rebellion begins in 2018. The U.S. puts out its, at that time, fourth annual assessment report where impacts are happening today.
Yeah, right.
And that's also 2018, I say, was pivotal for me because that's the year, too, we did the report. What's the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees?
Yes.
Yes.
And it turns out a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More
Like-
than it seems.
Coral reefs or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like half the world's population under heat, extreme death, heat,
Yeah.
or 15%. Like
Man.
huge differences.
Yeah, but to a layperson, like under 1% doesn't sound like a lot, right? And I feel like that's
right.
because they're not necessarily thinking of what that looks like on a global scale, and like what's like a point of a percentage of like a million people, you know?
Yeah. Or, you know, you don't really, you hear a temperature and you don't correlate that to other things, right? You just think it means like what, a hotter summer and a warmer winter.
Yeah, you're like,
but
that's
like
fine.
it is so much deeper than that, right? Like that means more wildfires. That means less food because we are depleting ourselves of resource, you know? That does mean droughts or flooding in places. It does mean no
Yes.
more coral reefs, which feeds an entire ecosystem. You know, it is an ecosystem.
Exactly.
And so it's like,
Yes.
you know, it's a lot deeper than just losing a couple of things or losing access to a few things. Like it means the whole world goes through a shift that it's not prepared to go through. Like it usually takes thousands of years
That's right.
to increase a temperature like that. And we're talking about since what, the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
This is hundreds of years
Exactly.
and we're really pushing hard
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah. Well,
Putting pedal to the metal.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
It's called the Great Acceleration since World War II for
Yeah.
a reason, right? Most of the emissions, more than half the emissions, have been in my lifetime.
Yes.
Right? And so when we pair this idea again of like where I started with, okay, the environmental movement is like humans are impacting this world, and then we see this climate crisis, right? And this building and building and building. But to really understand that, yeah, every fraction of a degree then mattered, I think was a way that opened up a lot more hope, right?
Of course, yeah.
Even 2013 to 2018, it was bleak, folks.
Yeah.
To all the young folks out there, you think it's tough now, like, oh my, you couldn't even say the word climate, right?
Yeah.
Not politically. You would
Yeah.
get the doors shut in your face. I mean, it was incredibly difficult.
You were nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were hoaxes.
Yes.
I was, on the take, right? I was taking all this money from people apparently,
Yeah.
that to say these things out
Yeah,
loud.
right.
Yeah.
and-
I saw this like little meme online that was like kind of talking about like, this like denial of climate from politicians, and then somebody was just like, well, what if it is all a hoax and we just build a better planet for no reason?
Exactly.
And I was like, yeah, exactly. Like what's the, like, even if let's say we're wrong about climate change,
Right.
obviously all the science proves the fact that it's happening.
Yep.
What's so bad about building a better, cleaner world because
Exactly.
in spite or because of that?
I call it, so sometimes I play this game with myself and I call it worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And
It sounds like an anxiety brain thing.
It is 100% an anxiety brain thing. And it's worst case scenario because sometimes you're like, well, the absolute worst that will happen
right.
is this. And the absolute best
right.
outcome is this.
Yes.
And so usually it's like what? The worst thing you get is a no, right? The worst thing that comes out of something. So like the worst thing that we get out of trying to bring more green spaces and have renewable energy and, regenerate the natural spaces that we have and invest in people. Like what is the worst case scenario coming out of that?
That's right.
And it just doesn't look bad at all.
No.
It really doesn't.
No.
It looks beautiful. It smells great.
Exactly.
It feels like a wonderful summer in Michigan.
Not as expensive. Yeah.
It's not nearly as expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where are we now?
Oh,
because
gosh,
I
yeah.
know where you are
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
Michigan Climate Action Network.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know how you got there, but I would love to tell people
Yeah.
how you got there. And then maybe just talk a little bit about MiCan itself.
Sure.
I want people to know,
Yeah.
the full scope of what we do. So.
Yeah, of what we're doing, right? So So 2019, we host this climate strike at Kalamazoo, and like 1,500 people show up, putting my little 200-person list to shame, right?
Wow.
And we were organizing 2,000 folks, and that's where I learned about the Michigan Climate Action Network.
Okay, yeah.
Because I founded the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, and we became a member organization.
Nice.
Yeah,
Love
exactly. And I thought, okay, we're doing all of these things, passing climate emergency declarations in town, all the things. And I got to know this state org in that way to provide some resources to make those connections. And then they gave me their award.
Yeah.
We do annual awards. And so I won the Climate Champion Award as a professional in like 2021.
Yeah.
And, we went through this little thing called the pandemic, right? Like
The dark times.
Don't remember that.
don't remember that? Yeah. It does do something to your time, lapse. Yeah.
Totally.
And I think that made education very difficult,
I'm
right?
sure.
Of course.
I think it was one thing that really affected teaching online was no fun. And I think
I'm
it
sure.
really kind of burnt me out because I love teaching. All my colleagues, all my students love you. And I just thought, boy, I don't think I can keep doing that this way.
That would fizzle me
You're
out.
you're such an energy person.
I know.
You're
Yeah,
high
you're so, like,
energy.
personable.
You yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I need this, right?
I could see how much you would just dislike speaking to a computer all day.
Yeah.
As much as there are other people on the other side of that, it's just, it doesn't give the same.
Right.
Yeah, especially because then when you close the laptop and they're gone, So,
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yep.
So I thought, wow, and I've won this award. And I sat down that spring break of that spring of 2022 and said, I think that I should try to do something else. And like 2 days later, I learned that my predecessor, Kate Madigan, was going to step down as director of Michigan. And I thought, well, there's a spidey sense and the shiver up where should you be in this world at this moment.
Wow.
I said, I'm applying. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do
Denise.
it. Yeah.
I
know.
love that. Oh, that's so much better than hearing that you won the award and then, ending where you were like that. That's a real pivotal moment for someone when they decide I'm not in this and I'm going to go for something else.
Yeah. Was it like a scary leap for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to acknowledge that, right? I mean, I was a tenured professor with
Yeah,
nothing.
you're leaving so much security
Yeah.
behind.
Who would leave so much security? People still ask me, they're like, are you crazy?
Are you okay?
Yeah.
And now you're again the crazy climate
I'm
lady.
crazy again, right? I'm like, who does that?
Yeah.
And I said, there really isn't that much security.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. I think the way to look, especially when you really understand climate change
Yes.
and what's
Yeah.
happening, I'm sorry, but these
Yeah, there's
systems
bigger issues.
are not providing that security that you think they really are at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to take that leap and to do things in other ways. And so even though it was super scary and definitely was a pit in the stomach, right? A
Yeah.
scary feeling, especially that first few months of can I even do this? How do
Yeah.
we do this? A lot of the skills are transferable, but there's a lot of things I had to learn, which to
Yeah.
me was exciting,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
If you've been playing along here, audience, right? I like to learn.
Yeah.
And I like to find that next thing, right? And figure it out and then harness it
Totally.
for our cause, for our good, right?
You absolutely do that.
Yeah,
That's
especially for something that's a networky kind of coalition. You could definitely have that extroverted, just welcoming. You're just so personable. So
Oh, thank you.
yeah,
Well,
you're
and
perfect.
all these orgs already knew me as the professor, right?
Yeah.
So I
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
had this
so you
The
have
credibility.
had
a
this,
little street cred.
Street cred walking in.
Yeah.
You can call me Dr. Keele now. No, it's all right.
You are so funny for that.
So
No,
yeah,
but
Doctor for
wear
you.
that badge, right? I mean,
Exactly.
because in this work in particular, it has people are looking for that sometimes.
right.
You know, well, what do you know?
Yeah, they're
right.
so quick
Why
to
should I
discredit.
listen to you?
Mhm.
Yes. So you're well, I'm a doctor.
there you go. So you
and
got
I've been
that.
in this for 20,
Exactly.
30 years. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you just have to bring your own authenticity, right? Being genuine is, I
Totally.
think, the number one
Yeah.
that anyone can do. But this organization, Michigan Climate Action Network, was founded in 2015 for many of the same reasons that I started the Western group, the Kalamazoo group.
Yeah.
No one was saying climate out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was founded to be bold and equitable.
Yeah.
right, in climate. And I said, that is exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
what
we're
is
trying
wrong
to do.
with that?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Call me crazy. Again.
Yeah.
So
The
that's
good kind.
Yeah, that's what we're out here trying to still do. So I try to live up to that mission, to carry that history with me of those times where we couldn't say this out loud even.
Yeah. I like that there is like the values continuity for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I like to tell the truth. And I think I shared earlier, if you want to play poker with me, you'll probably win because I'm going to say it, right? It's going to show on my face, what it is and where we're at and what I really think. And it's super important to then keep that network structure together, right?
Yes.
That's the other thing I see across the state and why I took this position. Even our own Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition. There's the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition.
right.
It's a coalition in Oakland County. It's
Cute.
this same form, right? The same human form was starting to recognize, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a lot of groups already and people already that are caring about these things. How can we instead unite them
Yeah.
for climate justice actions, right?
Yeah.
And that model is just so attractive because it allows folks to stay in their lane or to find whatever is the right path for you within the movement, right?
Totally. And that's such a good point because sometimes it's difficult. Like, maybe you want to do the tree stuff. Maybe you want to do the water stuff. Maybe, you just want to support some of this work and you're not ready to be a huge voice, but you can still be a part of that network, right? Everybody kind of has like the same baseline of like, we just care about the environment and want better from the systems that control those environments.
That's right. And the whole grassroots approach. So when I came in, it was, I inherited a wonderful organization, right? And there was a lot of already grass tops connections. Right? When we think about our legislators or the state agencies or other powerful environmental organizations. And since coming on board, we've really focused on that grassroots piece for those reasons, right?
Yeah.
Because that is, we want our communities to have their say.
Yeah.
And the folks who care about that community, like y'all right here in Grand Rapids, that are impacted, right? Most impacted by those decisions as well. And so it has to come from the bottom up is the other just big philosophy of our organization.
Yeah. I do like to imagine you guys as like, that like, how you hear about that like tree Wi-Fi where there's like that fungi underground that connects like all the trees' roots and stuff.
Mycelium?
Yeah, the mycelium. I almost said mycorrhizal, but I could never say that word, so I just skipped it. Anyway.
Sometimes
cut
I
that
make
part
stuff up. No way, Nance. We're calling you out today. Nancy always has the facts and the words and everything.
Yeah.
She's got the references. So
Yeah. But it doesn't think of that, and then because it is like coming from the roots, but then like it like manifests in like the treetops too, right?
That's right.
So there's that. And
That is
so beautiful.
It's so beautiful, and I'm one of these people that I just sort of I have good instincts, I think, and good vision.
You're still around, I would say so.
Thank you.
It's gotten you this far.
But it's so funny you say, because I often don't connect the dots about why exactly this is the thing that I see that we should be engaging in, right?
Yeah.
And what you just said describes last year's art project so perfectly.
Oh yeah, like that art that you guys had at the summit. I forgot about
Denise, funny because the reason why I'm here
I know.
is because I went to a Line 5 conversation and I was like, it felt like this is the campaign I just understand and know. And I just learned a little bit about it. And then I saw that position when I was I don't even know where I saw it. And I just I'm going to go for it. So talk about the summit because it was such a great place for us to connect. Yeah. Also, there's another one coming up in September in Ann Arbor. So
plug it.
Let's hear about it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So wonderful thing this organization did was start the Climate Summit, an annual summit focused on climate, right? And so this will be our 5th annual this year. I kind of can't believe that, making it through COVID and pre-me and everything. And last year was really the first one that we got to put on, that I got to put on, and on behalf of this organization. We were over at Oakland University. And the other thing, right, that was really missing from the movement that so many folks have recognized, right? Again, we do not do any of this work alone. It is in partnership with so many folks. But, I did the science and policy for 20 years. Where is our art? Where is our music? Where is the real social movement, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we went
need
with that theme.
chants. Yeah, we need It's funny. I was listening to this podcast called How to Save a Planet, and they were like, we need like a, what do they call it? Just like that song that they have for like a movement. There's a word for it.
Like a ballad?
Kind of a ballad, but almost like a rallying song.
Yeah.
To like really inspire
The
you.
climate one?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was like, we do need more like
we need
music
an anthem. Is the word.
An anthem. Yeah, we
That's
need
what
a
it
climate.
is.
We need a climate anthem.
Yes, exactly.
If I was more musically inclined, I would give it a shot. But
but I think for the first time ever, we really did that at the state level last year, and we have an artistic director, the great Colleen Ludwig from Oakland University.
The great. I love that.
She made this whole, poster essentially that was mycelium and mycorrhizal and roots, and we ask folks questions around the lens of climate cafes, right? So how are folks feeling? What does your community need to be resilient?
yeah,
What are those skills and capacities that you think you're missing, right? What are we losing? Things like that. And folks were encouraged to write directly on those roots to build this beautiful base. And it's
we
now...
wrote some stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say
You
we
wrote
wrote
some
stuff.
stuff.
Of course. Yeah. No, it's just super interesting.
And I love that it is now archived at the Royal Oak Historical Society. Thank you so much, Royal Oak and Sierra Club, for
really?
making that happen as like meeting Michigan's moment. Like,
Yeah.
where are we at in this moment in time? It was 2023, right? And boy, I have a little bit of luck, I think, in taking this position and my timing, because, right, you think about what has happened even since I started in 2022. I mean, the feds did pass the Inflation Reduction Act, despite all of its problems, right, and not adequately addressing justice and those pieces. Big deal. The Michigan legislature flips for the first time in 40 years, right?
Yeah.
Big deal, right? And we get to host this climate summit in the midst of all of these pieces. And then, of course, last fall, work on clean energy legislation.
Yeah.
Right? So this year's summit, it's an election year. If everybody out there didn't know that yet.
In case you missed it.
I don't know if that's, well known, right?
Sometimes I almost wish I could put it somewhere else. It is just very much in all of what we're doing.
Yeah, it's hanging out in the frontal lobe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but what's the theme for the year?
our theme this year is climate civics. And so, and so it will be
So timely.
but like GOTV, think regular, get out the vote stuff, and absolutely election integrity and how to do those pieces. We will be on the University of Michigan's Ann Arbor campus, September 26th. It's a Thursday. Please come out. But the larger real vision behind climate civics is exactly what we were already talking about.
Yeah.
How do we sustain citizen activists? Because it is so important to our democracy to make sure voices are heard, to make sure folks have the right to continue to freely organize and to protest their government, to call the truth out when we see it, to push for the things that we know are going to benefit our communities.
Yeah.
And it's hard darn work. I know both of you know that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
How do you sustain that? How do you really encourage that? How do you invigorate that kind of civic participation and engagement, right?
Yeah.
And
it has to be engaged with before, otherwise voters get hopeless and they might kind of like stop being as engaged. So you definitely need to, like, that has to be very like intentional from at all levels, right? From grassroots to grass tops.
That's right.
For sure.
That's right. So, voting is the easiest thing we could do as citizens. And think of how many of us don't do that even, right?
Man.
Because of the cynicism or the barriers that exist, especially for our young people.
Or the
to
lack
do
of
that work.
understanding.
Absolutely.
Think about which it does matter. Absolutely show up for your presidential, your federal, all of that elections, but like the local elections. We don't understand who's running what. Yeah. We don't understand who's running when they do or what their priorities are. Yeah. It feels kind of like the local elections, I feel like they don't have nearly as much backing as they should, because those people are making decisions directly on your behalf.
Yeah.
But like the lack of understanding around voting as a whole and why it's important to do. And that's something that what we talked about, you can't teach everybody everything, but if you can teach one person, they can teach one person, then they can teach one person, and then that can
teach
grow.
gateway skills.
Totally.
That's it. So that's one of the big themes. Like, okay, what skills do you need to be not just accept our rights as citizens, but we have duties.
Totally.
Right? If you want to keep this a free society, folks, guess what? We need to do some things together. And absolutely there's a justice angle to that, right? There's a reason why it takes, so few folks are voting in those local elections. It takes time and energy to go to that public meeting, right?
Yeah.
Even if it is held in the evening at maybe a time that you're off work.
Yeah.
But what are you really going to do?
Work. You you want to go home. You want to eat a meal and hang out with your family and your friends.
That's right.
Maybe read a book that's outside of work. You know, yeah.
So I think there's I'm looking forward to a larger conversation about, again, how do we really complement that work in all of our daily lives? How do we return to a space where I'm not just so on the treadmill of work and got to get dinner on the table, right? That we're allowing and in fact creating the space for folks to engage in those decisions that are affecting them every single day, right? And that's what's missing, right? And that's why folks either are disenfranchised through other systemic systems and reasons and ways, or we're really just becoming a society that cannot have the time, doesn't really have the time, or doesn't feel like that's important, right? And that's what we hope to combat.
Which does also feel strategic, you know?
Absolutely.
I mean, the more tired we are, the less we're going to be able to make decisions, and we'll just leave it up to somebody. Of course we do. And we only have so many hours in a day.
That's right.
And I want to spend, I did the math. And we have, I think it was about 160 hours in a week. And if you sleep 8 hours a day, that's 50 hours.
That's right.
And, if you're working anywhere from 30 to 50 hours a week, that's the other 100, that's 100 hours of your week gone, leaving that additional, 40, 50, 60 hours to grocery shop, clean, enjoy your life, lean into all of these things.
Still have a self-care routine
Still
somehow.
have it, totally, right? And so when you throw 40 hours at someone and then expect them to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night, that leaves us with only a portion of time to experience things. And that is in between voting and doing all those other things. We don't, it's not written into your work schedule. Some of us maybe. It's not written into your work schedule to educate yourself on these things, which is why we are creating a climate voter guide, right? So there are things like this that, GRCC, the Climate Coalition did it last year. And we're partnering with lots of other networks so that we can get nonpartisan information based on some of the things that we see as priorities within the environmental movement. So if you want to, again, just talk a little bit about the climate voter guide.
You guys are pros. You're making it so easy.
I mean, we all do this for work too. Again, some of us do get, this mix with work.
But that's exactly it. And I'm going to give Erica a huge shout out here. This is why you're such an important member of this team, because it's our job to make it as easy as possible for people because of those constraints and those demands. And we know that this is a justice issue and everybody can't pay that same attention, right? And we do have the privilege to look at that every day and get paid to do this work, right?
Absolutely.
And so, again, I think it's our whole mission to connect these folks, to amplify those issues, and to make it as easy as possible for someone to get into the movement, to see what's going on, and to take an action. And this year, of course, the easiest thing we hope you'll do is vote. And so we have created some questions that are built off of last year's Clean Energy and Jobs Act, which, you can read what I've said about it, but I'll give you the... there are a couple good pieces in there, right? And it was incredibly difficult to get past, but frankly, it was completely watered down by very powerful fossil fuel and utility interests in this state. And we're still very, very much wanting to improve. Let's defend the good parts of it, right? But let's improve and make sure that we get the bad parts, things. Because the other reason why climate civics is so important, and folks hear me talk about this all the time, and so I'll try to just connect the dots really close together here. Most people support these actions.
Yes.
Indeed, there is bipartisan support for some of the actions like community solar,
right,
that we all want. So why aren't they happening?
Money,
or why is climate now a partisan issue?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's a thwarting of democracy. When we see the public opinion, and it's not just the climate, it's so many progressive issues, frankly, are not really progressive. They are the majority public will.
Yeah.
And that majority public will is being thwarted by moneyed interests. Absolutely. And by anti-democratic strategies to keep folks down or to keep them not voting.
Yes.
On whatever it is.
Using their dollars that we don't have
To
make
lobby
it,
against them.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we can't even lobby.
Consumer energy.
That's right. Yeah. DT.
Yeah,
I didn't
right.
say
We don't have a whole
Right.
list of people.
No, not at all. Well, that's the thing. The other important thing to think about is it's a very few number of state and corporate entities that are responsible for the lion's share, like over 70% of all global greenhouse gas emissions over time. It's something like 70 to just over 100.
Yeah. Well,
And
and,
we
that's why
are.
Dana Nessel is calling some of them out right now.
Oh, I'm so proud of her.
Our climate champion award winner this
Yes.
past
I want to send her
year.
flowers or something. Like,
Let's
I'm
do
so
it.
proud of
Let's
her.
do it. Dana, we love you.
We
listen
love
to Green
Dana,
Rapids.
we
Yeah.
love
When are you
you.
coming on Green Rapids, Dana?
Oh,
Oh,
hey,
Let's do it.
Well, if I can get her in this room, I would.
I would pass out,
Absolutely.
but I would.
Yeah.
I would.
God.
We'd be shaking.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I bet she'll come.
That's a
Yeah.
goal. Let's
Yeah.
make that a goal.
Let's make it a goal
Seriously,
for the
because
year.
well, but also we need to highlight the voices of people who are doing these
That's right.
things. You know, we need to give them a platform because she's doing so many other things. She doesn't have time to be on
Yep.
or to have a podcast, but to be on one.
That's right.
And be able to talk to people, you know,
Yep.
or to, you know, just be such a champion. Like she's
Yes.
just she has, and I don't want to derail this. This is officially now going to be about her for the rest of the time.
Awesome.
Yeah, but no, I think it's so cool that she says, like, I care about the environment and I'm going to advocate for it.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
That's right.
So when it comes to these policies, if I see something come across my desk, this is what we're going to do.
Yep.
And I wish she was a politician for that reason. You know, I wish that she was somebody that had a little bit more say, was, you know, and not saying she doesn't have a lot,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when we think about who our leaders are,
Yeah.
we don't always go to the attorney general of our state.
Exactly.
It doesn't. It's not the first one that comes to mind, but that's why I think she's just so badass.
I feel like we really lucked that with her, though.
Yes, because she's like, I don't care if people don't know who I am. I'm still going to
exactly
do
right.
this, and I'm still going to champion my way through my beliefs.
That's right.
So, well, firecracker.
Yes, she
She's
is.
the only place in our state government, or frankly, even our federal government right now, that is holding carbon polluters accountable.
Yeah.
Love it.
Right? Like I always think we got to do three things, folks, to really address this crisis. We have to move to renewable energy, right? The
Plain
transition.
and simple.
Plain
Yeah.
and simple. We also have to conserve energy. Like
Yeah.
what we do with the energy we have is also really, really important. Like I had to get the insulation in my house. Like I can't see it, but it does make a huge difference, right?
Yes.
I can feel it.
And you're more comfortable now.
Absolutely.
And because you have the luxury of doing
That's
that,
right.
just do it today.
That's
Just
right.
If you can,
That's
do
right.
it.
And our Michigan policies are moving in that direction
Yeah, right.
from the Clean Energy and Jobs Act, right? They say, 60% renewables by 2035, and there's good energy efficiency pieces in there. But the thing that is missing from the Federal Inflation Reduction Act, our Michigan laws, is the third thing, which is ending the era of fossil fuels.
Yeah.
We also have to shut it down.
Yeah, they just keep like kind of like tiptoeing around it a little bit.
Well,
'Cause
what's the point in
Money.
investing in it? You know, I mean, I continue to go back to like the Enbridge
Yep.
proposed tunnel. And I think like this is so telling as to the mindset of those who are not prepared to take this on fully is how are we going to, in maybe 4 years, start construction that will last 10 to 15 years.
Right.
And then we are trying to end fossil fuels within a
Yes.
certain amount of time, you know,
Yes.
like, so even if we get the tunnel done in the next 10 years, are we going to use it for 5?
And then
we
shut
just
it down after pouring so much money into it.
Did we just disrupt ecosystems and
Exactly.
our environment and
That's
put
right.
so much at risk for the ending of fossil fuel era for the world
That's right.
looking to be about 2040, 2045?
Yeah.
That is permanent infrastructure that
That's
we
right.
continue to invest in.
Yeah.
And really, if we want to sustain life here, humans have to be the infrastructure that we are investing in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It just has to shift, and it can't continue to
Yeah.
be that, we run our lights and our heat off of fossil fuels. It's just, we're done.
We're done. We're so done with that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, biologically, all of the
Yeah.
The
right?
earth is saying
the Earth
it's
is
done.
saying it's
Like
done.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is those fossil fuel companies, the very few in number, incredibly powerful, and they are doing every strategy they can think of, right,
Yes.
to stop us from actually ending that era. And because for profits, to continue to eke that little bit of oil and make the money out
For
of it. And
maybe a few thousand people
right.
to benefit from
That's
this.
right.
And we're talking about 7 billion people
That's right.
who are going to be impacted, and
Yep.
the plants, and
Exactly.
the flora, the fauna, the everything in between.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I got some little like National Geographic magazines, some like old ones, because I've just been cutting them up to do little collages and stuff. And I kept running across these funny little ads from like the fossil fuel industry, like Shell and other ones like that, being like, "This is how we preserve nature." And I was like, "Oh, come on!" Like they try to just, and I feel like especially back then, some of them were pretty old. They're almost like not quite pre-internet, but like a little bit pre-internet, like maybe just like early internet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To where maybe you couldn't research that, and you would just have to take that at face value, especially
That's
because they're
right.
in National Geographic, which I feel gives them like a certain amount of credibility.
Exactly. Well, the other thing we're combating, right, is, again, my entire lifetime, 50 years of the most successful communications campaign ever.
Yep.
Totally.
Unfortunately, it's all about the mis and disinformation of denying climate and what. I mean, incredibly successful, and the public has been totally misled about the science, the social science, much less the emotional and leadership pieces of this, that we really are starting from behind a negative here and trying to solve this issue, because so many folks have believed those lies, right? And the money that they're able to put behind those things, we're never going to be able to match the money.
No, never.
It's why I tell my colleagues,
That's why grassroots is so important.
exactly.
Right?
I don't even want to C4. I don't want to do that kind of real luck, because to me it really is anti-democratic to continue to throw more money against money.
Yeah.
That's I'm never going to have as much money as Enbridge.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what do we have? We have people power.
Yep.
And we are the majority, the vast majority, right? The issue is getting a sustainable life where we're able to be a part of our own system.
Yeah.
And that is the really sustaining thing that keeps me going in this work, and that I think we're trying to do with climate civics, with, suing Enbridge, with supporting Dana Nessel.
It just all sounds so cool too. Like
Awesome
for
stuff.
suing Enbridge.
Exactly.
Just
Exactly.
the whole idea of them. Get them
right.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and that's beautiful. And I really think we should talk about like what motivates us more often, right? Like maybe it is switching things up.
Yeah.
Maybe you have been somewhere for
Right.
5-10 years or 15,
That's right.
and it's really difficult to get away from that space, but like your knowledge from that could be utilized in another way. And so I don't know, motivating. I always try to remind people of my personal story and how I got to the point, just because it's not far-fetched. You don't have to have all the answers or be this specific person. You just have to have a passion. for
Talk
what you're
about your
doing.
passions. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And like I feel like it does feel kind of silly calling this obsession with saving the planet a passion, because it's like, yeah, I'm
Right.
obsessed with surviving, aren't you?
yeah.
Ideally.
but like it was something that I definitely became very interested in and talked about
Yes.
with people, and then that led to me being where I am. But like reminder to folks out there, like I'm an art major, so it's like not
Yeah.
necessarily from that background, but
we need
still
every
always-
every single discipline, right?
We need all the
If
majors.
I'm thinking about every single person has something to offer.
especially lawyers.
Especially lawyers. We need some good lawyers. It's true. They're okay. But I mean, that's the whole point here, right? I think if anyone tells you we know exactly what to do, I mean, yes, we know what to do. Don't get
Yes,
me wrong.
right.
Yeah.
But not exactly. And we don't know what it's going to look like. I mean,
Yeah.
Erica, you were talking earlier. We are putting the planet into an experimental phase that has never been seen,
Yeah.
much less in human history. We don't really know. And there is, I think, a side of this that capitalizes on that fear and uses that uncertainty to say, well, let me tell you, you don't have to change a darn thing. You're just fine over there, and you don't. Right?
The
And that's
climate's
very
changing
easy.
anyway, so just
That's
keep
right.
living your life.
And then it taps into that, right? And what we have to do as a society is to get a little bit more comfortable with uncertainty and not knowing, and all the things that, frankly, the white supremacy culture embraces. It's so important that this is tied to racial justice
Yes.
and those reckonings and our understanding, because those systems are dismantling the way that we view the world, which is a false premise about
Yeah.
knowing and being able to have this dominion or whatever this stuff is. That's just not going to be the way. And we really have a huge opportunity to learn and to do this in a different way that doesn't make those same mistakes. And that allows us the creativity and flexibility and innovation that's in with every single human, no matter where or who they are. And that's something we can embrace, whereas our opponents would like to stifle your very creativity, your very spirit in this movement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some solutions that you feel like you'd like to highlight?
Ooh,
Or some of your favorite ones?
Yeah. So now that all these people are going to, come up with amazing things that I haven't even thought of is to me incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
But
what's on your radar?
We do know some of the things that we got to do, right? And that we can be doing. And so I am super glad that our state has this 60% renewable energy goal. We need to change some things about our understandings of what's called clean energy.
What is clean energy?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Like
that's
some definitions need to be finessed.
First on my list. And, it just makes our jobs harder. Again, come on.
Yeah, we're doing all the lift as far as like the educational and
Yes, exactly. I'm still just a teacher, just to different groups, right?
Well, and it probably drives you even more
Different
crazy
students.
to hear the misinformation. As an educator, you're like, you cannot.
You cannot really think that,
You
right?
can't think that, or you can't tell people that. You can't tell the public something that is not correct. You can't just give them that and say, okay, no. Here's clean. What energy? This is what clean energy means.
Right.
Yeah,
It's not a trash incinerator, just FYI.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Grand Rapids, for fighting that as waste incineration, as renewable energy.
Well, and I want to just go ahead and highlight that because that pressure was applied.
Yes.
The composting program that C4 is doing, partnered with Wormies and Urban Core Collective, got doubled by the county because the pressure that was applied.
That's
that uncomfortable conversation needs to be had.
It does.
Because as soon as you get in that room with that conversation, then all of a sudden it's like, well, this is what C4 is doing to combat this incinerator. County, can you match that? So don't be afraid to be that bold person to say, hey, that's not what clean energy is. That isn't the truth, and we need you to explain what it means.
Yeah, like Becca says, pushing those growth edges.
You have to, right? That's what it is to be alive if you're living it, right? It's just like class. There is not a wrong question. Raise your hand and put it into the public space, folks, because we need it, right? And probably everybody else is thinking it too.
Right.
And we need someone to be brave enough, courageous enough, whatever it is, to just say it, right? I think the other big things that are in like the climate voter guide that we're pursuing this year that meet these kinds of the crises that are interrelated, right? In thinking about it with justice and jobs and health and climate in every decision, right? We can be thinking about, that's why things like community solar are so attractive. And when you poll people and they're able to put that solar on their roof and they have too much excess energy and you ask them, well, what do you think should be done with that? They say, I would like to give it away.
Yeah.
And that just warms my heart because that is true human nature right there. Their first thought wasn't, I want to sell it.
Yeah.
I
Give
want
me
to
money.
store it.
Yeah.
I want to hoard it. It
Nancy just got solar panels on her roof.
Congrats.
Yeah,
Congrats.
I know. I'm especially working to try dismantle, like big energy. I was like, I don't want to give them more of my money. So
That's right.
And if you can, right, then do it. Some people can't. Obviously, like
That's
I'm renting an upper apartment. I'm not going to be able to, do that. But like you taking care of your footprint and then some.
That's right.
Is totally how we get there.
And that's why it's so important to do community solar, because there are folks that my neighbor's house is in the shade, right?
Yeah.
Or renters, right? And not going to be able to do that. And that desire to share that energy, right? That's what true community solar is, right? Is being able to put that back on a local grid and share that with my direct neighbors. That is currently illegal in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, right.
Because of the way our utilities have structured some of those pieces. And there's also not a huge incentive, because you guys know about this thing called the distributed generation cap.
Yeah.
The cap.
That even if
we're not fans.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how. First of all, we're not going to reach 100%. It's just that we can't for the city. But also, why would you ever put a cap on how much someone can harness from the sun so we can heat our apartments and our food up and, do all of these things.
Exactly.
It's very silly. Yeah.
Because the powers that be know they can then control that energy, right? If you think about
the monopolies and
fossil fuels are, right, they can hoard those, essentially. Capitalism 101.
where am I going to get a fossil fuel from?
How are we going to do that,
Yeah.
right? We can't do that.
Yeah.
But they can store it, they can transport it, you can then distribute it back out to where it needs to go. And our renewable energy sources have not been developed in that way because they're already here, right? I can access the sun and wind on a very, very small scale, but that is stopped or disincentivized because it doesn't feed that larger beast. Right?
Yeah. So, because we were on the topic then, so obviously clean energy transition, but a defining clean energy, renewable energy, those are the solutions we like. What are
like community solar?
But what are some, some other ones that you might,
or what are some that you dislike that you're like, they're kind of shady?
Ooh.
Nancy's, I love you always have this contrast. I love it.
I love a contrast.
Well, I'll go positive first and say the other things that MiCan, Michigan Climate Action Network, is doing. I'm very, very proud of we've just started a climate culture club, right? And this is the idea that, of course, there's an individual behind all this collective action. And we do need to be finding ways to support. How are you just thinking and feeling, and what art are you looking at? What movie are you watching? Back to my book club. Like, what are you reading? How do you understand this world that is changing so rapidly and our place in it, right? And so I think that is just a huge thing that we need to focus on with so many other folks, just to support each other through what we're living through in this moment in time, right? We're also trying to support some young people and bring them into the movement. We've got what we call climate influencers out there on social media.
That sounds fun.
They were fun.
Right?
Yeah.
I learned, this is the best thing, because you learn more from folks that you bring in to supposedly teach, right? I'm sure they're learning a few things from us about how to do social media, but we learn from them. And we need messengers, right? A diverse set of messengers, because it can't always be me, right?
And they have a following, right?
They do.
So, like, even if you have a couple thousand people following you, that's a base that we currently aren't reaching.
That's right.
And then also, those are just thousands of people that are going to see that content.
Right.
And to our point of teaching people how to do this so that we can't reach all of them at once, right? But you have influencers who are within a certain age or, a diverse demographic, and that's going to reach so many more people than even just our network right now.
Absolutely.
Especially because a lot of people our age get our news from social media. Like, that's where people are tuning in. That's where people are getting their information. And that's where, hopefully it's information that's also being shared out.
Yeah,
so.
and I'm told that doesn't mean Facebook for y'all. Right? Like,
sorry.
We're learning a lot, right?
I think I'm the only MiCan Facebook poster left.
Oh, no.
No, it's
Me and all the other old white ladies get together on Facebook and we share.
Have a little party.
But y'all are part of the climate movement too.
We are.
So
Absolutely.
Like, we need to cover all the bases, and I'm glad somebody's got that one. We don't.
So building base really is
That's
probably
right.
it's such a
Building
great
base,
solution.
It is, and we've got we've got more groups than ever joining us and being part of that. So I think it's about getting that network structure really honed and out there.
Do you guys have Third Act
movement.
in your group?
Yeah, the new Third Act folks
Nancy
are.
loves Third
I
Act.
love this.
I love Third Act. They're so sweet.
And there's really something to the intergenerational piece of this movement.
It's
right?
crucial.
Absolutely, right? You need folks who have been through the 60s, right? Learned how to organize.
People who weren't born at the beginning of the climate movement,
That's
but maybe
right.
helped start something like that. There is wisdom within that, right?
Absolutely.
They've lived through things that you can't understand until you have the experience.
Yes.
So learn from them.
Yes.
Utilize their voices.
Yeah.
Integrate
They've been
it
around
with
twice
youth.
as long.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And also right back to education, frankly. We're leading a couple groups, one that's focused on K through 12 and another group that's focused on higher education, because we're still not really even teaching this in our schools properly. So if you really want to transform culture, right, and build this durable, like, public support that is just undeniable, making climate action the right thing to do, right, is who we are, then education is fundamental to those. And teachers right now, it was so interesting. We did a quick little survey. And teachers feel like they can't teach it
Yeah.
because they feel like administrators or parents
Oh,
are like,
parents
going to get mad
would-
at them,
You
right?
can't say climate change. You're going to have 20
Exactly.
emails from 20 parents, and yeah.
Exactly. Or they feel like they don't know enough.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
right.
those are both gaps that
Yeah.
we can fill, right?
So, well, and who is it? Groundswell?
Oh, groundswell, you're going, yes.
So I had two different, encounters. I believe it was Allison
Yes.
was one person I spoke to, and then Micah from the Kent County Department of Public Works
Yes.
also reached out to me. So
Yes.
hopefully I'll be able to throw climate in every single space, because you're so right, right? Getting to youth and getting them involved, being on that youth panel, with the conversation we had the other day with Rep. Skolton, it was
Yes.
just really nice to be able to get to see young people between the ages of like 17 and 25 who are just like hyper passionate about this. It's like, wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
We need the energy.
We need that
Yeah.
energy.
And also we need somebody to pass the baton on to, right?
Absolutely.
well, and a better earth to give them.
Absolutely.
They have 10 plus more years than
Yes.
I have on this planet.
That's right.
And we got to leave them that last 10.
That's right. Well, we can't put that burden all on these
No.
folks, right? We got to keep doing our part and make sure we're holding that hand out and not laying this whole burden at folks' feet. But I think the thing about the youth and why it's the influencers and education still such a draw is that's our most impacted group.
Totally.
And they have the least voice in the system, right? And
Yeah.
so to me, that is another justice angle to say these are the folks who are going to be most impacted, right? Moving forward.
Yeah.
Oh, they're the innovators, right?
They
They're
are.
our future philosophers and lawyers and doctors,
Yes.
and hopefully the people who want to
Yes.
make those changes and continue to progress,
Yes.
even with these rising in temperatures and things like that.
Yeah. We're counting on you guys.
We like to close our episode with a call to action.
Okay.
Do you have a call to action that you're feeling compelled? Is there something that you want to tell people, like, this is how you can get involved. This is something that you can do. This is something I really love, and I just love, I think we've done like No Mo May,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it can be simple and it can also be complex. But
Oh, I would just encourage everyone, if you have any shred of that time that we talked about earlier, to find the one thing that you like doing, and I can find the group that does that in support of climate action. Right?
so reach out to you.
Reach out, and we will find, right? That's part of our whole role is to find and make those connections. This is what you're already doing in your life. You care about climate. Let us help you solve. It's called the attitude behavior gap, right? We know we care, but I can't take that action. Some barrier is there, whether
Yeah.
it's knowledge or knowing what to say or knowing the right group. You're already probably doing it. Let us help you amplify that and have your voice and what you want to do most in this movement really out there and connected. So come join us. Come join Erica.
Yes.
Join UCC here
Yeah.
in town. Grand Rapids Climate Coalition.
Yep.
Community Change on Climate.
WEMIAC.
We're cool, I
There's
promise.
so many.
There's so many groups. I promise you, whatever you're into, there is a climate angle and a climate group for you to just be you within.
I love that.
That's great.
Do I have a question for listeners? So in the beginning, when you talked about prescribing something to a forest, what does that mean?
Oh, yeah, good question. A prescription for I know, right? It's like I'm going to take 2 Valium a day. No, sorry. A prescription for a forester is the plan, the forest management plan that we write about which trees we're going to regenerate, whether we're going to use fire, how we're going to put our mark on that landscape. Right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
So
Yeah.
I was the only
you
one
are
that
a
was,
doctor.
like, a
You're a tree
technical
doctor.
thing.
I'm a
right?
tree doctor originally.
You
and
even
then
write prescriptions for them.
political science doctor after that.
Yeah,
and,
very
now just
cool.
a climate, climate doctor.
Well, not just, it's quite the feat. So, thank you for dedicating your entire life to this.
And so many hours to this right now. Thanks.
Yeah. No, but seriously, thank you so much. I think it's just super cool. And I love hearing how you went from like forestry all the way to the environmental law and policy. And I think it's super telling as to where a journey can take you, so Yeah, I think this was a great conversation.
You guys are so inspiring. I just so appreciate the time and your podcast. It's amazing.
Thank you. We really enjoy doing this. So, yeah.
All right. Can you piece us out of here?
Oh, that's right. Again, we are coming live on this Monday after Mother's Day, right? Of 2024 from downtown Grand Rapids Library. Peace out. We are Green Rapids. Thanks for listening.
Peace.
Bye.